On the broadcast tonight, Korea's ruling Saenuri Party elects new leadership on this Monday that will lead the Conservative Party for the next 2 years. The outcome is expected to be key in its relationship with the presidential office. North Korea fires some 100 artillery shells into the East Sea. This ahead of Thursday's meeting between the two Koreas on the North participation in the upcoming Asian Games hosted in the South. What are North Korea's true intentions? And we have a winner. Germany wins the World Cup with an extra-time victory over Argentina with Mario Goetze's $1 million goal. Early edition begins now.
I see trees of green, red roses.
늘 남편 먼저,
I see them
늘 자식 먼저.
for me and
레이디 퍼스트라는 말을 믿고 살아온 당신. 오늘만큼은 세상 누구보다 당신이 먼저입니다.
한 분 한 분 특별하게 모시겠습니다.
Excellence in Flight, Korean Air.
It is 5 a.m. in New York, 5 p.m. in Beijing, and 6 p.m. on Monday, the 14th of July here. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Ganyong.
And I'm Daniel Chad. Thank you for joining us. The ruling Saenuri Party held a convention in Seoul on Monday to select its new leader and 4 Supreme Council members who will lead the party for the next 2 years.
Well, the outcome of the election is expected to bring about significant change within the ruling Saenuri Party and its relations with the presidential office of Cheongwade. We connect live to our correspondent Ji Myung-gil. He is at the Saenuri Party convention site in Seoul. So, Myung-gil, do we know who the ruling party's next leader will be for the next 2 years?
Good evening, guys. I'm currently standing here at the Saenuri Party's convention, and the voting finished around 6 p.m. Korea time, and the results will be released within 30 minutes. As you can see behind me, there are a couple of performances that are going on as the voting is being counted. Among the two front-runners, Kim Bo-sung has promised to establish a relationship of healthy tension with Cheongwade, and that he will speak out against the administration when necessary. Seo Cheong-won, on the other hand, has emphasized the need to give the president the party's fullest support. In addition to the differences in their plans, Seo Cheong-won is a key ally of the president, while Kim Bo-sung has long been considered a potential presidential contender capable of exercising his own brand of politics. Pundits say Saenuri's new party leader will be tasked with gaining back majority of the assembly seats in the upcoming July 30th by-elections, and Kim may well use his chairmanship as a springboard to run in the 2017 presidential election. 4 Supreme Council members will also be announced within 30 minutes.
Well, it's pandemonium there at the convention, and President Park Geun-hye was among those in attendance as well. And Myung-gil, I believe she gave a keynote address at the beginning of the party's convention. What did she have to say?
Yes, at the beginning of the Saenuri Party's convention, President Park Geun-hye gave a keynote address at the beginning of the party's convention. And she said that she asked for the party and party members' unity under the new leadership. At the keynote address, she asked for the party's support in also implementing her reform drive as part of efforts to overhaul the government system in the wake of April's ferry disaster. She also said the only way to gain the people's trust was in succeeding in undergoing necessary reforms within the government and related government bodies. Her second cabinet is due to start this week and will be seen as a referendum on the Park Geun-hye's administration. And if I mention about the results were determined by a combination of votes cast by some 200,000 party members and a public opinion poll. The votes will make up 70% of the results, and the poll will count for the remaining 30%. Back to you guys in the studio.
Our Chi Myung-gil will be bringing us the results in a short while, but meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye's long-awaited Inter-Korean Committee on Preparing for Reunification will launch on Tuesday, and the remarks came during a meeting with her senior secretaries earlier today, where the president said the committee will discuss ways to boost public interest on reunification and ways to get ready for the process.
The 70-member committee headed by the president herself was scheduled to be launched in April, but was delayed due to the deadly ferry accident that month. On the domestic economy, the president called on her new cabinet, set to launch this week, to swiftly announce the government's economic policy direction for the second half of the year, to push forward with her 3-year innovation plan, and to check on her drive for a creative economy. President Park also urged the National Assembly to cooperate in passing a series of pending bills aimed at revitalizing the economy.
In the latest of its military provocations, North Korea launched more projectiles into the East Sea earlier this Monday. Now, this just hours after the two Koreas set a date for a round of working-level talks ahead of the Asian Games in South Korea. Arirang News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee takes a look at what the North's true intentions may be, sending out such mixed signals.
North Korea fired off around 100 artillery shells on Monday, just hundreds of meters away from the demilitarized zone. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said none of the projectiles landed in South Korean territory, but added it is rare for Pyongyang to fire so close to the border area. On Sunday, 2 short-range missiles were fired close to the demarcation line in Kaesong, which experts call a move clearly targeted at South Korea.
On the one hand, it is protesting the joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S. And on the other hand, it is calling for a shift in the Park Geun-hye administration's North Korea policy.
The launches came just hours after Pyongyang agreed to meet with Seoul this week to discuss the details of its participation in the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea. Last week, the North said it would send a cheering squad along with athletes to the sporting event, which will begin in Incheon on September 19th.
North Korea sent a message via the Inter-Korean hotline Monday morning, agreeing to South Korea's proposal to hold working-level talks on Thursday, July 17th. At the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjom.
On top of the agenda will be the team's transportation, their accommodations, and how the cost of the trip will be covered. The meeting follows Pyongyang's proposal to improve inter-Korean ties, and some say it could go beyond the scope of the sporting event. But considering its recent military provocations, North Korea is largely seen as trying to demonstrate its readiness for both dialogue or confrontation. The joint military drills between Seoul and Washington that begin this Wednesday could be another hurdle to better inter-Korean ties. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Well, now to some very welcome news on the trade front. Korean companies landed almost $34 billion in overseas plant construction orders in the first half of this year. Well, that's a staggering 20% jump from the same period last year. To what do we attribute the growth? Our Na Hyung-kyung explains.
Most of the orders have come from the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas. Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy says more than 50% of all orders were from Middle Eastern countries, including Kuwait and Iraq. African nations, including Algeria, also bumped up their orders compared to the first half of last year, but Asian and European countries reduced their orders, having fewer projects and plans to build industrial facilities. The total number of orders is worth $33.7 billion, nearly half of government's target of $70 billion for 2014. Experts say Korean firms opting to form consortiums instead of competing against each other was key to their winning bids in overseas markets. With the global economy expected to improve and emerging countries continuing to expand their industrial infrastructure, officials say the outlook for Korean construction companies in the latter half of the year does not look too grim. But with the lingering political uncertainties in the Middle East, insiders warn that it may not be too long before the orders stop coming in. They also point to a decrease in orders for offshore oil plants as Korea's 3 biggest shipbuilders struggle to ward off competition from China. The shale gas boom in North America is another factor, and observers say if the slump continues, Korean shipbuilders should quickly shift their focus to merchant vessels like tankers and LPG carriers, as more orders are expected to come out from Europe. 나현경, Arirang News.
More positive developments. Korea logged record auto parts exports in the first half of the year, backed by record shipments of automobiles to overseas markets. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says auto parts shipments amounted to $13.5 billion in the January to June period. That's up more than 5% from the same period last year. Officials attribute the solid figures to record auto exports of more than $25.5 billion in the first half of 2014. There is also increasing demand for auto parts that are used in after-sales service and providing parts to foreign car manufacturers such as BMW and Chrysler. The ministry says it expects auto part exports to continue rising in the second half of this year. Korea and China are holding a new round of free trade negotiations on this Monday in Korea's southeastern city of Daegu. The working-level talks, which will last for 5 days, are the first since the leaders of the two countries agreed during their summit talks in Seoul earlier this month to conclude a free trade agreement within this year. In this 12th round of talks, Korean officials will push China to open its market for industrial goods such as steel, machinery, and automobiles. Chinese trade officials are expected to ask Korea to do the same for its agricultural and marine goods. So far, the countries have agreed to liberalize their markets for about 90% of the 12,000 products traded between them, but have hit a stumbling block over which products should be excluded. Seoul says it doesn't plan to yield to Beijing's demands to fully open its agricultural and marine goods market just yet. Samsung Electronics has suspended business with a Chinese supplier suspected of employing children under the age of 16. The nonprofit labor group China Labor Watch has accused Dongguan Xinjiang Electronics of using at least 5 child workers to make parts and cases for Samsung smartphones. The Korean tech giant said previous audits of the Chinese company showed no signs of child labor, but has responded to the claims by launching its own investigation. Samsung said it would permanently cut off ties with the Chinese supplier if their probe determines any underage workers were employed there indeed. Xinjiang has not yet commented on the accusations.
Well, boosting the economy will be at the very top of the agenda for President Park's new cabinet, which is set to be launched sometime this week.
The Korean government has been making all-out efforts to revive the economy, especially following April's deadly ferry accident, which has had negative impact on consumer spending.
A sluggish housing market and dampened domestic consumption coupled with weak economic recovery. That is what the new cabinet faces.
And for an assessment and forecast of the latter half of the year for Asia's 4th largest economy, we are now joined live in the studio by Dr. Kim In-cheol, Professor of International Economics at Seongkyungkwan University.
Professor Kim, welcome to the program.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, so the incoming Deputy Prime Minister for Economy, Choi Kyung-hwan, and his team is probably under a lot of pressure, and they have a lot on their shoulders. Now, what in your view are some issues that need their immediate attention once they come into office?
Well, first of all, his policy stance is going to be much different than his predecessors. His policy position will be much more on the output growth rather than on the equitable income distribution. He wants to stimulate the economy specifically by easing the house loan restrictions, and he wants to lower the interest rate to stimulate investment and household spending. And possibly he wants to increase the government spending if it allows. So we have much hope to see how he's going to handle all these issues.
So even an extra budget supplement might be drawn?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the central bank has been quite a slasher recently. It slashed economic growth outlook for this year to 3.8% and trimmed next year's by 0.2 percentage points to 4%. Professor, in your view, what is the main reason behind this?
Well, as a lot of people can imagine, the economic performance during the second quarter, from March through June, the household spending was very weak. So was the firm's investment. Especially the household consumption was very weak because of the ferry disaster. Because I have heard, actually many people saying that the people do not spend their money, for about 2 months after the April ill-fate ferry. The central bank needs to do something to stimulate or to, get the economy back on the normal track. And now the central bank governor is contemplating to lower the interest rate. I think the central bank needs to go, cooperative with the new finance minister.
Well, the nation's real estate policy is largely expected to impact the Korean economy in the second half of this year. And there have been talks about revising the LTV, the loan-to-value ratio, or the debt-to-income DTI ratio. These are some housing market regulations that have been put in place for various reasons. How do you foresee the nation's housing market policy changing under the new finance minister?
Well, previously the government was very strict in respect to the house loan restrictions. But this time, the new finance minister is going to ease some house loan restrictions. Now, some critics are asserting that new Minister Che's short-term measures will immediately create huge bubbles of house price. But I don't think that's going to happen because Minister Che is a well-trained economist. I don't think he's going to drastically change the LTV and DTI ratios. And he's going to make a combination of policies, not only the DTI or the LTV ratios changing, but he wants to lower the interest rate. Together with these two things, he wants to stimulate the entire economy.
Okay, Professor Kim, what about the exchange rate for the remainder of the year? How would that be altered? Okay,
the Korean won currency has been appreciated sharply these days. Mainly because of the huge surplus in the trade or current account. Now, the exchange rate change is a short-term phenomenon. It fluctuates all the time, and the exchange rate changes regardless of whether we have a running trade or deficit surplus. It is determined largely by the key currencies, including the US dollar and the European euro. These two currencies are dominating in the world currency markets. So when the US dollar appreciates, then the Korean won currency is going to depreciate no matter what. So it really depends on the situations in the currency markets and the global currency markets. So hopefully the exchange rate is going to find the proper place or in place. But in the meantime, we need to reduce the huge surplus in the current account by stimulating the imports more, because we can import more of the foreign raw materials and equipments and then capital goods more than usual. So that way we can reduce the pressure on the currency appreciation.
All right, so become, I suppose, less volatile, I suppose, or less dependent on the current exchange rate fluctuations.
Right.
All right, Dr. Kim In-chul, Professor of International Economics at Seongkyungwan University, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening.
My pleasure.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life, talking with you on air and online, connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Well, across the globe, thousands of Palestinians are fleeing their homes in Gaza after Israel warned of more air and even ground attacks. The weekend saw the first ground attack by Israeli troops, this despite a statement issued by the UN Security Council Saturday that called for a ceasefire and peace talks. Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
Ignoring international appeals for a ceasefire, Israel on Sunday widened its range of Gaza bombing targets to civilian institutions with suspected Hamas ties and deployed ground troops inside Gaza. This marks the first time Israeli ground troops have entered Gaza in the current offensive. Thousands of Palestinians are fleeing northern parts of Gaza after Israel warned it was targeting the area in its campaign to stop rocket attacks. A ground war seems likely, with at least 20,000 reservists having been mobilized. Israeli forces raided a suspected rocket launching site in Gaza on Sunday, with 6 Palestinians reportedly injured during the attack. Israel says it's targeting Hamas militants and terror sites, but the United Nations estimates 8 out of 10 of those killed in Gaza have been civilians. At least 160 Palestinians have been killed so far, with the Palestinian president calling on the international community to protect Gaza. Despite intensified Israeli military action, Hamas continues to launch rockets into Israel. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Well, after close to a month of some of the most exciting football the world has ever seen, we now have a new World Cup champion, which is Germany.
That's right. First time a unified Germany wins the cup. The European team were crowned World Cup winners for the 4th time with a 1-0 extra time victory against Argentina in the final. Our SJ Lee has the details.
As many fans and pundits predicted, it was an exciting match to close out the 2014 Brazil World Cup. With the match going the full 90 minutes without a single goal scored, the match went into extra time, still looking for a clear winner. It wasn't until the 113th minute when Mario Goetze scored a brilliant goal, giving Germany the 1-0 lead and the win. For Germany, this marks their 4th World Cup win, but first as a unified nation, as the team have only won as West Germany in the past. For Argentina's Lionel Messi, who shanked his final chance at an equalizer, he was still able to win the Golden Ball award given to the best player in the tournament. As expected, German goalkeeper Manuel Neuer claimed the Golden Glove award for the top goalkeeper in the tournament. Colombia's James Rodriguez takes home the Golden Boot award with 6 goals in total. And now that the 2014 Brazil World Cup has ended, the baton is passed over to Russia, who will host the 2018 World Cup. SJ Lee, Arirang News.
China has released its 11th set of confessions from Japanese war criminals during the World War II.
In the latest confession, a former Japanese soldier admits to killing well over 800 Chinese, many in deeply degrading ways. A word of warning out there, some of the images contained in this report by our Son Jung-in are disturbing and viewer discretion is advised.
China's State Archives Administration posted a confession of Keiji Saganaka on Sunday in its latest move to expose Japan's war crimes on the international stage. In his written confession, Keiji admitted killing 831 Chinese while he was in command from April 1937 to September 1945. The victims included 434 civilians, 98 militiamen, 252 soldiers of the 8th Route Army, 38 anti-Japanese soldiers of other armies, and 9 prisoners of war. His methods of killing were especially brutal: shooting, stabbing, beheading, burning, and starving. He confessed to killing a soldier by dissecting him while he was still alive and burying 30 civilians waist high before shooting them. Keiji was also responsible for the enslavement of thousands of Chinese civilians who were captured and used for forced labor. He also admitted to raping more than 30 Chinese women and using poison gas on the battlefield. This is only the beginning of China's publication of confessions of 45 Japanese war criminals. China wants to highlight Japan's wartime atrocities amid disputes with the country over history and territory. The document has also been translated into English, reflecting China's efforts to reach Western audiences. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
You know, I think I'm repeating the same thing every evening. The weather-wise here in Korea, it's hot and humid.
Summer is here, and let's hope we can have some relief on our weather. Michelle Park is joining us in the Weather Center to see if any chances of rain is in the forecast. Michelle?
Good evening. It's been a dry monsoon season so far, but that will change starting Wednesday in the southern region, which will be affected by the monsoonal front, resulting of about 20 millimeters of precipitation there, and the rest of the nation, including Seoul, will get dose of rain on Thursday and Friday. Now, but even with this rain, we can expect a hot, humid day nationwide tomorrow, and the daytime highs will extend into the 30s for some regions. And keep in mind that the UV levels remain very high, so make sure to apply sunblock before heading out. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 24 in the morning and reach up to 30 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 31 and 27 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 25, Dokdo at 28, while Mangkunggang tops to 30s. Now that's all for now. Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. For our viewers in Korea and in similar time frames, do join us again next time. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. And to those of you in other parts of the world, have a great start to your day. And as for the results from the Saenuri Party convention, we should be getting that very, very shortly. And we will have the result for you in our next newscast. Have a great evening, and bye-bye.